The great hall of the empire stretched for nearly a kilometer. Its walls were made of black stone taken from conquered worlds. The ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside during the rainy season. Thousands of warriors stood in perfect lines, their armor gleaming under the pale blue lights. This was the heart of an empire that had crushed 63 species under its heel. At the far end of the hall, Emperor sat on a throne made from the bones of his enemies. He was massive, even by standards. His dark purple skin was covered in scars from 100 battles. His 4 arms rested on the armrests of his throne, each hand large enough to crush a human skull. His eyes, burning orange like dying stars, looked down at the small group of humans standing before him. The human delegation had come to discuss peace. They wore simple gray uniforms. They carried no weapons. They looked like insects pretending to be worthy of his attention. "You wish to negotiate," said. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "You, who have only traveled among the stars for 300 years. You, whose bodies break so easily. You dare to stand in my hall and speak of peace as if you are my equal." Ambassador Park stepped forward. He was a small man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had spent 40 years in diplomatic service. He had faced warlords and tyrants before, but even he felt fear looking at the emperor. "Your Majesty," said carefully, "we seek only to establish borders. Our colonies do not threaten your empire. We wish to trade, to learn from each other, to avoid unnecessary conflict." Laughed, the sound was terrible. "Trade, learn, you speak like scholars, not warriors. My people do not trade, we take. We do not learn from the weak, we crush them." The warriors in the hall stomped their feet in approval. The sound was deafening. Standing at the back of the human delegation was a man named. He was not a diplomat. He was a salvage ship captain who had been hired to transport supplies for the delegation. He had no business being in this hall, but the had demanded all humans present themselves before the emperor. Was 34 years old. He had short black hair, a weathered face, and tired eyes. He had served in the military for 10 years before leaving to run his own ship. He had seen many things in his life, but he had never seen anything like this hall, this emperor, this display of raw power meant to frighten. He was not frightened. He was angry, but he kept his face calm. "However," continued, leaning forward on his throne, "I am not without mercy. You came here seeking friendship. I will give you a gift, a symbol of the relationship between our peoples." He raised one of his massive hands and made a gesture. A door at the side of the hall opened. 4 guards walked in, dragging someone between them. The person was small by standards, barely taller than a human. She wore torn clothing that might have once been fine. Her pale violet skin was bruised. Her silver hair was tangled and dirty. Her hands were bound in heavy chains. The guards threw her onto the floor before the human delegation. "This is," said, "my 3rd daughter." Murmurs spread through the human group. "A princess. Why would the emperor give them a princess?" "She is defective," continued, his voice filled with disgust. "She cannot fight. She hides in libraries reading about science and mathematics. She has the body of a child and the spirit of a coward. She is a shame to my bloodline. I have tried to make her strong. I have tried punishment, harsh training, isolation. Nothing works. She remains weak." Did not look up. She stayed on her knees, her head bowed, her body trembling. "So I give her to you," said. "Take this worthless creature. Perhaps your weak species can find use for weakness. Consider it a gift from the Empire to humanity, a reminder of what we think of you." The hall erupted in laughter. Thousands of warriors mocked the humans and the broken princess at their feet. Ambassador's face remained calm, but could see his hands shaking with anger. This was not a gift. This was an insult. The emperor was saying that humans were so worthless that they deserved only his garbage. "Your Majesty," said carefully, "we cannot accept a person as a gift. It is against our laws. We do not own people." His eyes narrowed. "You refuse my generosity. Perhaps I should reconsider allowing you to leave this hall alive." The threat hung in the air. Everyone understood. If they refused, they would die. If they accepted, they would take on this broken princess and the shame that came with her. Hesitated. It was an impossible choice. That was when stepped forward. Everyone turned to look at him. The diplomats, the guards, the warriors, even the emperor. A nobody salvage captain walking forward as if he belonged there. "I will take her," said. Turned sharply. "Captain, this is not your decision to make." "No," agreed. "But the ambassador cannot accept a person. I can. I am not here as a representative of any government. I am a private citizen. I can take passengers on my ship. She will be a passenger." Leaned forward, interested despite himself. "And who are you, little human?" "I run a salvage ship called the I pick up broken things and fix them, or I find them new homes." He looked down at who had finally raised her head. Her silver eyes met his. He saw fear there. He saw hopelessness. But underneath, buried deep, he saw something else, a spark that had not yet gone out. "She can come with me." The emperor stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed again, louder than before. "A salvage rat. You are fitting for each other, the broken princess and the garbage collector. Yes, take her and go. This meeting is over. There will be no peace treaty. There will be no borders. When I am ready, I will come for your worlds, and I will enjoy watching your species beg for mercy." The guards grabbed the human delegation and began pushing them toward the exit. Walked to and knelt beside her. "Can you walk?" he asked quietly. She stared at him with confusion. No one had asked her anything in years. They only commanded. They only punished. Yes," she whispered. "Then come on." He helped her to her feet. The chains on her wrists were heavy, but she managed to stay standing. "We are leaving." As they walked out of the great hall, the laughter of the followed them. Thousands of warriors mocking the humans, mocking the princess, enjoying the grand joke their emperor had played. Kept her head down. She had been humiliated so many times that she thought she was numb to it. But this was different. Being given away like unwanted property. Being called worthless in front of aliens. Being handed to a stranger who would probably sell her or use her as a slave. She had no hope left, but walked beside her calmly. He did not look back at the laughing warriors. He did not seem angry or frustrated. He simply walked, matching his pace to hers so she would not fall behind. When they finally exited the great hall and stepped into the cold air outside, took a shaky breath. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you take me?" Looked at her. His eyes were not cruel. They were not greedy. They were simply tired. The eyes of someone who had seen too much pain in the galaxy. "Because no one should be thrown away like garbage," he said. "Not even a princess." He continued walking toward the landing platform where his ship waited. After a moment, followed. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know if this human could be trusted. But for the first time in many years, she felt something other than despair. She felt curiosity. And that small feeling, that tiny spark, would change the fate of two civilizations. There was not a beautiful ship. It was old, patched in dozens of places, and made strange sounds when it flew through space. The paint on its hull had faded years ago. Some of the lights in the hallways flickered. The heating system worked only when it wanted to. But stepping inside for the first time, it was the strangest place she had ever seen. There were no weapons mounted on the walls, no battle flags, no trophies from conquered enemies. Instead, there were plants growing in small containers near the windows. There were books stacked on shelves. There was soft music playing from somewhere she could not see. A woman met them at the airlock. She had sharp eyes and short dark hair. She wore a worn jacket and carried a tool belt around her waist. When she saw, she raised an eyebrow. "Captain," she said, looking at, "you went to a diplomatic meeting and came back with an alien princess. Should I be worried?" "Probably," said. She will be staying with us for a while." studied with the careful look of someone who had learned not to trust easily, but she did not seem hostile, just cautious. "Does she bite?" asked. "I do not bite," said quietly. Almost smiled. "Good, we had a passenger once who bit. It was a whole situation." She turned and walked down the corridor. "Come on, I will show you to a cabin." Followed, confused. Cabin, she had expected a cell, a storage room, perhaps a cage. Her father had kept prisoners in cages. Instead led her to a small but clean room. It had a bed with actual blankets, a window that looked out at the stars, a small desk, a door that could close for privacy. "Bathroom is down the hall, second door on the left," said. "Food synthesizer is in the common room. If you need anything, ask. If you touch the engine room without permission, I will throw you out the airlock. Any questions?" Had 1,000 questions, but only one came out. "This is for me, this room." Frowned slightly. "Yes, what did you think we would do, make you sleep in the cargo hold?" Actually, that was exactly what I'd thought. She did not say this. She simply nodded. "Get some rest," said, her voice slightly softer. "You look terrible." She left, closing the door behind her. Stood alone in the room. For a long moment she did not move. Then slowly she sat on the bed. The mattress was soft. She could not remember the last time she had slept on something soft. She waited for the trap to reveal itself, for someone to burst in and laugh at her for believing she would be treated well, for the cruelty that always came eventually. Hours passed, no one came. She slept. The next days were strange. No one hit her. No one screamed at her. No one told her she was worthless. The humans simply went about their work and they let her exist. She met the third crew member, Juno, on her second day. He was the ship's medic, a young man with gentle hands and curious eyes. He found her in the hallway looking lost. "You must be," he said with a friendly smile. "I am Juno. Can I examine you, just to make sure you are healthy? They did not exactly treat you well." Flinched. Examinations in her father's palace had always meant pain, tests of endurance, measurements of her failures. Juno noticed her fear. "I will not hurt you," he said softly, "and you can say no. I am asking, not ordering." Asking, not ordering. These words were strange to her. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you ask? I am your prisoner." Juno shook his head. "You are not a prisoner. You are a passenger, or a guest, or a crew member if you want to work, but not a prisoner. Prisoners cannot say no. You can always say no." This broke something inside her. She felt tears forming in her eyes, and she hated herself for showing weakness. Among the tears were punished. But Juno just waited patiently. He did not mock her. He did not look away in disgust. "Okay," finally said, "you can examine me." The examination was nothing like she expected. Juno was gentle. He explained everything he was doing. When he found the old scars on her back, the marks of punishment and training, he said nothing cruel. He simply treated them with medicine and asked if she wanted to talk about it. She did not. He accepted that. "You are healthy enough," he said when he finished. "Underweight, some old injuries that healed badly, but nothing that cannot be fixed with time and food." He paused. "And maybe some kindness." Kindness, another strange word. As the days turned into weeks, began to observe the humans more carefully. She watched how they worked together, how they argued and then forgave each other, how they shared meals and laughed at jokes she did not understand. She watched most of all. The captain was a quiet man. He spent most of his time repairing things or planning routes to places where they could find salvage. He did not talk much, but when he did, people listened. Not because they feared him, because they respected him. One evening she found him alone in the common room, playing a board game by himself. Black and white stones on a grid. He looked up when she entered. "Cannot sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. Sleep had always been difficult, too many nightmares. "Sit down if you want," he said, returning his attention to the board. She sat across from him, watching him place stones with careful thought. "What is this game?" she asked. "Very old game from Earth. My grandfather taught me." He placed a white stone. "It looks simple, but it is very complex. The goal is to control territory, but you have to think many moves ahead." "It does not look like combat," said. "Among all games were about fighting." "It is not about combat, it is about balance, strategy, patience." He looked at her. "Sometimes the strongest move is not attacking. Sometimes it is waiting, building, connecting." She thought about this for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been eating at her for weeks. "Why did you take me? The truth?" Was silent for a while. He placed another stone before answering. "I used to be a soldier," he said. "I fought in small wars on the edges of human space. I saw many things, bad things. I saw people used as tools, as weapons, as objects. I saw commanders throw away soldiers like they were nothing." He paused. "I left because I could not stomach it anymore. I bought this ship. I started picking up broken things from dead battlefields and giving them new life, ships, equipment, sometimes people." He looked at her directly. "When I saw you on that floor, I saw someone who had been thrown away, and I thought, maybe I can give her a new life too. Maybe she is not broken. Maybe she was just in the wrong place." Did not know what to say. No one had ever seen her as anything other than a failure, a disappointment, a defective product of royal blood. "What if I am broken?" she asked quietly. Almost smiled. "Then we fix you. That is what we do here, we fix things." Months passed, began to eat regularly. She gained weight. The dark circles under her eyes faded. She started helping around the ship, small tasks at first, cleaning, organizing supplies, learning how human technology worked. And she discovered something amazing. The knowledge her people had mocked her for, her understanding of science and engineering, was valuable here. When she explained the weaknesses in ship designs, listened with genuine interest. When she suggested improvements to the shields based on alien technology, tested them and found they worked. "You know useful things," admitted one day, which was high praise from her. For the first time in her life felt useful, not worthless, not defective, useful. One night she sat in her cabin looking out at the stars. She thought about her father's palace, the cold halls, the constant fear, the endless message that she was wrong, that she was weak, that she would never be enough. And she thought about this small, broken ship with its strange human crew, the warm common room, the patient captain, the sharp-tongued first mate who was slowly becoming a friend, the gentle medic who asked instead of ordered. She realized something that surprised her. She was happy. Not perfectly happy. She still had nightmares. She still flinched at loud sounds. She still expected cruelty around every corner. But underneath all that fear, there was a small, warm feeling growing in her chest. She belonged somewhere. There was not much. It was old and patched and made strange noises. But it was hers now. These humans, these strange, soft, impossible humans, had given her something her own people never had. A home. And deep inside her, that spark that had seen in her eyes began to grow into a flame. 6 months after joining the crew, they found a massive piece of salvage floating in dead space. It was a battle cruiser, destroyed in some forgotten battle, its hull torn open like a gutted animal. "This is big," said, looking at the sensors. "Really big. If we can strip the valuable parts, we could make enough credits to upgrade the whole ship." Nodded. "What can you tell us about this class of ship?" Studied the scans. Her heart beat fast. She knew this design. She had spent years reading about military vessels while hiding in her father's libraries. "This is a Ravager-class cruiser, old model but still dangerous. The most valuable components would be in the engine room and the weapons bay. But there are security systems, traps. If we enter the wrong way, we could trigger automated defenses." "Can you guide us through?" asked. She hesitated. This was real responsibility. If she made a mistake, people could die. Her people had always told her she would fail at everything. That voice was still loud in her head, but was looking at her with trust, real trust. "Yes," she said, "I can guide you." The salvage operation took 3 days. Directed the team through the dead ship, pointing out dangers, identifying valuable components, translating warning signs. She made no mistakes. When they finally pulled the last valuable piece of equipment onto let out a long breath. "That was good work," said, looking at, "really good." Those simple words meant more to than any royal praise ever had. After that became an essential part of the crew. She handled all interactions with alien technology. She identified valuable salvage from worthless junk. She even started suggesting trade routes based on her knowledge of patrol patterns. But something still bothered her. She was still afraid. Every time they encountered other ships, her heart raced. Every time and went on dangerous missions, she stayed behind, useless, waiting. She had knowledge, yes, but she had no strength. If enemies boarded the ship, she could do nothing but hide. One evening, she found in the cargo bay, practicing combat moves. The first mate moved like water, flowing from one strike to another, her body a weapon. Watched from the doorway, fascinated. "You can come in," said without turning around. "I know you are there." Stepped forward nervously. "I did not mean to disturb you." "You are not disturbing me." Stopped and turned to face her. "You have been watching me train for weeks. Why do you not just ask?" "Ask what?" "To learn," crossed her arms. "You want to fight, I can see it. But you are scared. You think you are too small, too weak, like your people always told you." Looked at the floor. It was true, all of it. "Among I am small," she said quietly. "My brothers and sisters were all warriors by the time they were 10 years old. I could never keep up. I was beaten in every training session. Eventually, they stopped training me at all. They said I was a waste of resources." Was quiet for a moment, then she spoke. "Humans are small too. Compared to we are tiny, weak, fragile." She picked up a training stick from the rack nearby. "But we have conquered the stars. We have fought wars against species twice our size and won. Do you know why?" Shook her head. "Because we do not fight the same way. Your people value brute strength, overwhelming force. They hit hard and expect their enemies to break." Smiled dangerously. "Humans learned long ago that there are other ways to win: speed, precision, intelligence, using your enemy's strength against them." She tossed the training stick too, caught it clumsily. "You are small," said. "Good. Small means fast. Small means you can fit through gaps. Small means your enemies underestimate you. Small means the knife in the dark instead of the hammer on the anvil." Looked at the stick in her hands. It felt foreign, dangerous. "I do not know if I can learn," she admitted. "You will not know until you try." Picked up her own training stick. "First lesson: when someone bigger than you attacks, do not block. Redirect. Use their momentum against them. Their strength becomes your weapon." The training was hard. Fell many times. She collected bruises on her arms and legs, but for the first time in her life she did not give up. Every time she fell, she got back up. Every time she failed, she tried again. Weeks turned into months. Trained her in close combat. Juno taught her pressure points, the places on a body where a small strike could cause great pain or unconsciousness. Showed her how to use simple weapons that required skill instead of strength. Slowly transformed. Her body became lean and efficient. Her movements became quick and precise. She learned to read opponents, to predict their attacks, to slip through their defenses like smoke. She would never be a brute force warrior like her siblings, but she did not need to be. She was becoming something else, something new. One night she sparred with using full contact rules. No holding back, no mercy. For 10 minutes they fought across the cargo bay, trading strikes and blocks, dancing around each other. When it was over, both were breathing hard. Had landed 3 solid hits, had landed 5. but the first mate was smiling. "You are ready," said. "Ready for what?" "For whatever comes." What came arrived 3 weeks later. There was docked at a border station, selling salvage, when sensors detected 3 patrol ships approaching. This was unusual. The station was in neutral space, far from the Empire's official territory. Then the message came through. "Attention, station. We are here for the traitor. Surrender her immediately and no one else will be harmed." His blood went cold. Her father had not forgotten her. He had sent hunters. "We should run," Juno said, looking worried. "We cannot outrun 3 patrol ships," replied grimly. Was calm, he looked at. "What do you want to do?" She was surprised he asked. Among her people, no one asked the weak for their opinion. "If I surrender, they will kill me," she said, "but they might leave the rest of you alone." "Not an option," said immediately. "You are crew, we do not surrender crew." "Then we fight," said, checking her weapons. The battle began within the hour. The ships attacked the station, ignoring all calls for peace. They were here for blood, and they did not care about diplomacy. They took hits. Systems failed. Alarms screamed. But flew the old ship like a master dodging fire that should have destroyed them, finding gaps in the enemy formation. Then the boarders came. Warriors cut through the airlock and poured into the ship. They were huge, armored, terrifying. Each one was trained from birth for combat. Each one had killed before. Met them first. She fought like a demon, taking down 2 warriors before a third slammed her into a wall. She fell, injured but alive. Juno dragged her to safety while tried to seal the corridors, but there were too many enemies. They pushed deeper into the ship. Hid behind a cargo container, her heart pounding. This was the moment of truth. Everything she had learned, everything she had practiced would be tested now. She could stay hidden. She could wait for death or rescue. Or she could fight. She thought of the cold halls of her father's palace, the endless mockery, the voices telling her she was nothing. Then she thought of trust, training, Juno's kindness, this ship, this home. No. She would not hide anymore. Moved through the corridors like a ghost. She had studied the ship's layout for months. She knew every hiding spot, every shortcut, every blind corner. The first warrior never saw her coming. She struck from behind, hitting pressure points Juno had shown her, and he fell unconscious before he could scream. The second warrior heard something and turned. She was already inside his guard, too close for his massive arms to grab her. She used his own momentum, redirected his charge into a wall, then finished him with a blade she had taken from the first warrior. The third warrior found her standing over his fallen comrades. He roared and charged. Did not run, she did not freeze, she danced. Every lesson came together in those seconds. Redirect, slip, strike, move. She was small, yes, but she was fast, she was precise, she was the knife in the dark. The warrior fell. By the time reached the corridor, was standing alone among 3 unconscious warriors, breathing hard, a blade in her hand. He stared at her. "You," he started. "I told you I was paying attention," she said, and then, despite everything, she smiled. The remaining retreated. Word would spread. The worthless princess had killed elite warriors. She was not worthless anymore. Later, while Juno treated injuries, found sitting alone in her cabin. She was shaking. The adrenaline was fatting, and the reality of what she had done was sinking in. "I killed them," she whispered. I thought it would feel terrible, but it did not. I felt strong." Sat beside her. "You were protecting your family. There is no shame in that." Family, he called them family. Looked at her hands, hands that had held books all her life, hands that had now held weapons and used them to save people she loved. "I am not the person I was," she said. "No," agreed. "You are better. You are who you were meant to be all along. Your people just could not see it." Took a deep breath. The fear was still there, the old voices still whispered, but they were quieter now, weaker. She was not weak anymore. She was awake. 2 years had passed since a broken princess was thrown at the feet of humans like garbage. The woman who stood before the Human Coalition Admiralty now was unrecognizable from that trembling creature. War armor designed by human engineers specifically for her body. It was light, flexible, and enhanced her natural speed. Her silver hair was cut short, practical for combat. Her violet skin was marked with small scars, each one earned in battle. Her silver eyes, once filled with fear and hopelessness, now burned with quiet confidence. Behind her stood and Juno, but they were not alone anymore. They had grown into a small fleet over the 2 years. Other salvage ships had joined them. Former refugees, outcasts, people abandoned by their own societies, all finding purpose under the quiet captain who had once accepted a worthless princess. The Admiralty chamber was full of important people, generals, politicians, strategists. They had gathered because the Empire had finally made its move. 3 weeks ago, a massive fleet had crossed the border and attacked human colonies. Thousands were dead. Entire cities were burning. War had come. Admiral sat at the center of the long table. She was an older woman with iron-gray hair and cold eyes that missed nothing. She was also, had learned, mother. The relationship between them was complicated. Had left the military years ago after a disagreement with her mother about tactics and ethics. They had not spoken since. But today was not about family drama. Today was about survival. "You claim to have valuable information," Admiral said, studying with obvious skepticism. "You are a princess of the enemy empire. Why should we trust you?" "I was a princess," corrected. "My father threw me away. They consider me dead. I have no loyalty to them anymore." "Pretty words, but you could be a spy, a plant. Your father could have sent you here specifically to gain our trust." Almost laughed. "My father thinks humans are insects. He would never imagine that an insect could pose a threat. He would never waste resources on such a complex plan. His strategy is simple: crush everything with overwhelming force." She stepped forward. "I know his tactics because I was raised watching him conquer. I know his weaknesses because I spent my childhood studying military theory while he ignored me. I know his patrol routes, his communication codes, the gaps in his sensor networks. I know all of this because he considered me too worthless to hide anything from." She paused. That was his mistake. Admiral leaned back in her chair. "And what do you want in return for this information?" "Nothing for myself. I want resources for Captain's fleet, ships, supplies, official recognition. We have been operating on the edges, helping where we can. But this war requires more than edge work. We can strike where your regular military cannot. We know the border regions. We have contacts among species that have conquered. We can gather intelligence, disrupt supply lines, evacuate civilians from occupied zones." The admirals murmured among themselves. It was an unusual proposal. A ragged fleet of salvage ships and outcasts, led by a former enemy princess, asking to join the war effort. Admiral raised her hand for silence. She studied for a long moment. "You have changed," she finally said. 2 years ago, you were a scared girl who could barely speak. Now you stand before the most powerful military leaders in human space and make demands. What happened?" Thought about how to answer. So many things had happened: training, fighting, healing, learning what it meant to be valued, learning what it meant to be loved. "Humans happen," she said simply. "Your people showed me that strength is not just about muscles and violence. It is about never giving up. It is about adapting. It is about lifting others instead of crushing them." She looked back at. "One human in particular showed me that I was never worthless. I was just in the wrong place." Said nothing, but there was pride in his tired eyes. Admiral was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. "You sound like my daughter," she said, glancing at. "Stubborn, idealistic, convinced you can change the galaxy with nothing but willpower." crossed her arms. I learned from the best. The tension between mother and daughter hung in the air, but Admiral did not push it. Instead, she turned back to, "Very well, I will give you provisional recognition, 3 ships from our reserves, supplies for 6 months. You will operate independently but report your intelligence directly to my office." She leaned forward. "Do not make me regret this." "You will not regret it," promised. The months that followed proved her right. Knowledge was invaluable. She predicted movements before they happened. She identified weaknesses in their formations. She helped human forces win battles that should have been losses. But she did not just advise, she led. Her small fleet became legendary among the border colonies. They appeared out of nowhere, striking enemy supply lines and vanishing before reinforcements arrived. They evacuated civilians from planets about to be conquered. They rescued prisoners from transport ships. Word spread, the princess who was thrown away, the human's pet, the worthless daughter who had become a warrior. To them, she was a ghost story, a warning of what happened when you underestimated the weak. To the humans, she was a hero. But did not care about fame. She cared about her crew, her family. And she cared about winning this war. One night, her fleet received a distress call from a remote station. It was being attacked by a raiding party. Normal protocol would be to report to command and wait for regular military response, but knew that by then, everyone on the station would be dead. "We go," she ordered. They jumped to the station in time to see 3 destroyers circling it like sharks. Escape pods were being shot down. The station's shields were failing. "We are outnumbered," observed from this bridge. "Yes," agreed, "but they do not know that we know exactly how they think. Take the fleet to these coordinates." She transmitted navigation data. "We will attack from 3 angles simultaneously, the hate dividing their attention. It confuses their command structure." "And if you are wrong?" Smiled, "Then we die fighting, but I am not wrong." The battle was chaotic. 3 salvage ships against 3 destroyers should have been a slaughter, but had studied tactics her entire life. She knew their weaknesses like she knew her own heartbeat. The destroyers fell one by one. The surviving retreated. The station was saved. When the rescue shuttles landed and survivors poured out, crying and thanking their saviors, stayed on the bridge. She watched the debris of the destroyed destroyers floating in space. Ships built by her father's empire. Ships that had once made her tremble with fear. Joined her at the window. "You did well," he said. "It is not enough," she replied. "We save 1 station. My father destroys 10 planets. We are winning battles, but we are losing the war." "Then what do we do?" Was quiet for a long time. She thought about her father, his arrogance, his certainty that he was unstoppable, the way he had thrown her away without a second thought. "We cut off the head," she finally said. "My father is leading the main fleet personally. He always leads from the front. He believes it shows strength." She turned to, "If we can reach his flagship, if we can defeat him directly, the empire will fall apart. Follow strength. Without him, his generals will fight each other for control." Frowned, "You want to assault the emperor's flagship. That is suicide." "Maybe." Eyes were hard. "But I have spent 2 years becoming someone new. Someone my father never imagined I could be. I think it is time to show him." She walked to the communication station and opened a channel to Admiral. "Admiral," she said, "I have a proposal. It is dangerous. It might fail, but if it works it will end this war." There was a pause, then Admiral's voice came through. "I am listening." Took a deep breath. For the first time since she was thrown at the feet of humans, she would face her father. But this time, she would not be kneeling. This time, she would be the one standing tall. The corridor was a narrow passage of safe space between 2 massive nebulae. Any fleet traveling through this region had to use it. There was no other way. This made it the perfect place for an ambush. Emperor knew this, of course. His advisors had warned him, but he did not care. He was the conqueror of 63 species. He had crushed armies 10 times his size. No force in the galaxy could threaten him. His fleet numbered over 500 ships. The largest warships ever built by the Empire moved through space like dark mountains, bristling with weapons. At the center of the formation was his flagship, the Eternal Wrath, a vessel so massive it had its own gravity. From its bridge, watched the stars pass by, dreaming of the worlds he would soon burn. He did not know that his daughter was waiting for him. The human coalition fleet was smaller. 200 ships, most of them lighter cruisers and destroyers. On paper, it was a force destined to lose. They outnumbered them more than 2 to 1. But numbers meant nothing when you knew your enemy's every secret. Stood on the bridge of a coalition command ship, watching the tactical display. Beside her were Admiral, Juno, and the captains of a dozen other vessels. Everyone was tense. Everyone knew what was at stake. "They are entering the corridor," an officer announced. Nodded. "Begin jamming on frequencies 7 through 42. Those are their primary communication channels." The officer blinked, all of them at once. "Yes, trust me." The jamming went active. Across the corridor, ships suddenly lost contact with each other. Confusion spread through the enemy fleet. They were trained to fight as individuals, to rely on personal strength, not coordination. Without communications, they were a collection of angry warriors, not an army. Had known this would happen. She had spent her childhood watching her father's forces train. She knew their weaknesses because she had been considered too weak to matter. "Attack pattern Delta," Admiral ordered. "All ships engage." The coalition fleet struck from 3 directions, using the nebula clouds for cover. They hit the enemy where had predicted, at sensor blind spots and formation gaps. Ships exploded before they could respond. Others fired blindly, sometimes hitting their own allies. It was chaos, beautiful, calculated chaos. On the Eternal Wrath, Emperor roared with fury. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Who is attacking us? Why are communications down?" His commanders had no answers. They scrambled to restore order, but every fix they attempted failed. Someone knew their systems intimately. Someone was playing them like instruments. Then a voice crackled through the static. It was broadcasting on a channel the humans should not have known, a secret frequency used only by the Imperial family. "Father," the voice said, "I have returned." Froze, he knew that voice. He had not heard it in 2 years, but he knew it. He breathed. "You threw me away like garbage," she continued. "You called me worthless, defective, a shame to your bloodline, do you remember?" His hands curled into fists. "You dare speak to me, you are nothing, you were always nothing." "I was nothing to you, but humans saw something else. They saw potential, they saw strength. They made me into something you cannot imagine." Her voice was cold now. "And now I am coming for you." The battle raged for hours. The coalition fleet, guided by intelligence, systematically dismantled the formation. Ship after ship fell. Commanders who had never known defeat found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. But the Eternal Wrath remained untouched. Its shields were too strong, its weapons too powerful. Even as the rest of the fleet burned, the flagship stood like an invincible fortress. "We cannot break through," Admiral admitted. "We have no weapons that can pierce those shields." Had expected this. "We do not need to break through, we need to go inside." She turned to ready the team. Nodded, he had known this moment was coming. "Thee is prepped. Are you sure about this?" "No," admitted, "but I am doing it anyway." There was just a salvage ship. Old, patched, unremarkable. That was why no one noticed when it slipped through the battle, weaving between burning ships and debris clouds. It was too small to be a threat, too insignificant to warrant attention. It docked with the Eternal Wrath through a maintenance port that knew about from her childhood. She had explored every corner of these massive ships when she was young, ignored by everyone. Now that knowledge would end an empire. The strike team was small, and 12 coalition Marines. They moved through the corridors of the flagship like ghosts, following routes that avoided security checkpoints, using codes that's father had never bothered to change. They killed only when necessary, knocked out guards, disabled automated defenses. Every step brought them closer to the bridge. Was waiting for them. He stood alone in the center of his command deck. His elite guards lay around him, unconscious or dead, defeated by the Marines. But the Emperor himself remained standing. His 4 arms were spread wide. His orange eyes burned with rage. "So," he said, looking at, "the defective returns, and she brings her pet humans." Stepped forward, her team stayed back. This was personal. "I am not defective," she said. "I never was, you were just too blind to see it." Laughed, it was a terrible sound. "You think you have won. You think killing me changes anything. They will never accept a traitor like you. Another warlord will rise, the war will continue. You have accomplished nothing." "I am not here to become empress," replied. "I have no interest in ruling your broken empire. I am here to end this war, and I am here to show you something." "What?" She drew her blades, human-designed weapons, light and precise. "I am here to show you that strength is not only measured in muscle, that size does not determine worth, that everything you believed about power was wrong." His eyes narrowed, then he charged. He was massive, fast despite his size, trained from birth in every form of combat. His 4 arms gave him impossible reach and flexibility. He had killed hundreds of enemies in personal combat. He had never lost. Did not try to match his strength. She could not. Instead, she moved. She slipped under his first strike, redirected his second, danced around his third. Every lesson had taught her, every technique Juno had shown her, every principle had explained, all of it flowed together in a deadly dance. She was small, she was fast, she was the knife in the dark. The fight lasted 90 seconds. When it ended, Emperor knelt on the floor of his own bridge. 3 blades were at his throat. His arms hung useless at his sides, disabled by precise strikes to nerve clusters. His orange eyes stared at his daughter with something he had never felt before. "Fear." "Kill me," he rasped. "That is power, that is what strength means." Looked at him for a long moment. She could do it. One movement, one cut. The universe would celebrate. The monster who had conquered so many worlds would finally pay. But then she thought about kindness, about what it meant to be strong in ways they had never understood. "No," she said, stepping back. "Killing you would make me like you. You will live. You will face trial in coalition courts. You will watch your empire crumble as your own generals fight over the scraps, and you will know that you were defeated by the daughter you threw away." She turned to the Marines. "Secure him. Contact Admiral. Tell her the eternal wrath is ours." As the Marines moved forward to bind the Emperor, walked to his side. "That was impressive," he said quietly. "I learned from good teachers." She looked at him. "Thank you for everything, for seeing something in me when I could not see it myself." Smiled that rare, tired smile she had come to treasure. "You did the hard work. I just gave you a chance." The war ended 6 months later. Without the empire fractured, warlords fought each other for control. Many sought peace with humanity rather than continue a losing war. The coalition offered fair terms, and slowly the violence stopped. Was offered everything: lands, titles, a seat on the coalition council. She refused all of it. Instead, she returned to the old ship was still ugly, still patched, still made strange noises, but it was home, was there, still sharp-tongued but now smiling more often. Juno was there, still gentle, now teaching medical skills to refugees they had rescued. Was there, still quiet, still fixing broken things. And was there, not a princess, not a warrior, not a legend. Just crew, just family. One evening, she sat in the common room watching him teach to a group of young refugees they had picked up from a border colony. His patience was endless. His kindness was quiet but deep. She thought about her father's palace, the cold walls, the endless cruelty, the voices that had told her she was nothing. Then she looked around at this small ship, at the warmth, at the people who had given her a new life. She had been given to humans as an insult. She had chosen to stay as family. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all.